Welcome to today's episode of Blending Fab, a podcast all about relationships where we explore expectations and lessons learned along the way. To keep up to date with what's coming up, be sure to follow us on Instagram at blending_fab. Let's get straight into it.
So, rumor has it, Byron, you are the youngest of 10. Please tell me more.
Well, my family dynamic is my mother and father came together 74, 75. I was born in 75. Okay. I am the only child that my mother and father had together. So I'm the baby. My father had two boys from a previous marriage.
Mm-hmm.
My mother she was married one time before and she had everybody else.
Gotcha. Did you feel like the only child? What was the gap for that in ages?
That was
There was actually prior to him
oh yeah.
one who passed away,
Yeah.
so there would have been 11.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But she asked me about, I'm sorry, the age gap.
What you say again? I'm sorry.
Was there like an age gap? Or do you feel like you all grew up together and things of that sort?
I would say I had four. Okay, the closest brother to me is 6 years older than me. So I had three brothers that were in they were right there with each other. My two from my dad's previous marriage, and then one brother. He was the youngest until I was born, and so I kind of grew up with them more so. The rest of the kids, they were pretty much adults. I did have one brother. My oldest brother was living with us uh, as I came up, and then he left the house, and then I had the youngest girl. She lived in the house with us for a while until she got grown and she had a child, which was my niece. And so I was kind of like, everybody, we had our own individual relationship. But the three brothers I was kind of close to, I kind of followed them, around. So I was exposed to a lot more than I probably should have.
With the oldest, like he has nieces and nephews
Yeah.
that are older than him.
Yeah.
So they
That
were
too.
all out. But
yeah, I'm probably the youngest uncle now. So
no.
I used to be the
uncle.
youngest uncle now.
So, Margaret, for you, where do you find yourself in the siblings? How many siblings did you have?
So I was raised as the only child. I am the only child that my parents had together. I was my mother's only child. My father had 4 others. And he says I'm the youngest that we know of. And he also was in Vietnam, so I'm convinced that there may be a possible, at least one possible. But I grew up as an only child. I wasn't even aware of one of my older siblings until I was 19 and literally saw him in McDonald's and was stunned because he looked exactly like my father. And then the other 3, there was a partial relationship with them when I was younger. They were they were around that. They actually went to school with his brothers.
Yeah.
So they were 5, 6 years older. But there was mama drama on both ends, so that kind of caused that split. So I grew up pretty much as an only child. I had my cousins that I was close to, but I was an only child.
Got it, got it. Now, in this vein of being an only child and in this vein of being the youngest of 10, of 11, what were your thoughts of having children? Like, did you want to have that 10? Did you want to just have a 1 and to be an only child? How did that process work? It's funny that you're laughing. This is about to be funny, huh?
So I can remember one day before we were married when this was a cute conversation then, and we talked about having two birth children and then we would adopt. And I said, I want a big family. And he was like, you sure? So after we had our two birth children, we did adopt. We adopted, she was 14 at the time, had had a very rough childhood, and it was not a good fit at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So that put all dreams away
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
adopting more.
We
Mm-hmm.
ended up calling adoption the A word. It
Right.
was
We
like a
said the
curse
A
word in
word
our
for
home.
years. Um, Ironically, she ran away. We didn't hear from her for years, and then she popped up when she was about 21, and she had a baby. Wasn't ready to be a parent, so we ended up adopting the baby, and had her with us until she was 8. So we still ended up with 4 kids. And then I've had students who have just been, we've taken in, I have one who he calls us mom and pop, and that's our 5th child unofficially. We've had other children, godchildren who have come with us for periods of time. So we had the 4 main ones. We had the one who, and we still are in contact with him, and then there were in and out. But I think that ideal that we had when we discussed it before we had children, realization kicked in once we had once we started having, like, you know what? Yeah, just a couple.
One hats off to adopt. I worked in the foster care world with child services, and it's a process,
Yes.
to be a parent, period, is a process. But then to adopt and take someone else in, that's still, commendable. Going through the process, trying to support. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. That's even, if we're honest, with children that are birthed, right? Because they come out and their personalities they want to do what they want to do because they're grown. They don't need you.
Yep,
And
exactly.
she is our adopted child. It will be 34 in May,
Mhm.
and we are beyond proud of her.
Yeah.
Her daughter is with her now. Um, she realizes what we went through in supporting her, and she doesn't take that for granted. She is a loving, caring, compassionate young lady. So we're very proud of her and glad that we could play a part in that.
Very nice. Very
Mhm.
nice. And then to know that your labor wasn't in vain. You
Right.
know, you try your best. They
Right.
say, like, not a manual for being a parent. And though there are books and maybe there are manuals, but everybody is unique and different. So the
Exactly.
book is nice, but I got to make so many tweaks. Let me make my own new book for this one.
Right.
Exactly.
Another book for that one.
Especially when, you know, I came from a less than ideal situation as a child. And so my thing was, I didn't want to repeat some of those things with my own kids.
Yeah.
But it's the type of thing, our son, which he was the oldest until we adopted. So he's our first child. I'm like, son, you were a guinea pig.
Yep.
So we try things and we're like, oh, that's not what we expected.
Yeah.
And then you
Yes.
have to dial back and regroup. And then the second kid comes along and you've learned a little more. And so for him, and all of our kids, they're phenomenal human beings, and that's what we wanted. It
Yeah.
wasn't about they're in school doing this or they're doing. I wanted phenomenal human beings, and
Mhm.
they're talented, beautiful, they're compassionate, and we're proud of them. But they took us through some things.
Yep.
They took us through some
All of them
things.
took us
Every
through some
one of them,
things. Yep.
yes.
Yep.
Somebody wrote a song said, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." So
That's
you are
right.
truly stronger because of it.
Me.
Love it. I love it. So, in that you said that you did have the conversation of having children, but was it always a dream to have children? Do you feel like you knew that was your calling to be parents, or how was that process?
I know for me, coming from the large family, um, I, I I did have a lot of examples of healthy marriages, healthy relationships.
Mhm.
In fact, one of my middle, I say the middle sister, but she's the middle oldest sister. Her and her husband just celebrated 50 years 2 weeks ago.
Mhm.
Very nice.
And so they were an example that, you hang in there. And having the abundance of nieces and nephews throughout the years, I just assume that that's just what you do. You get married and you have children.
Got it.
It's always a plan of mine. And I said it, even when I was younger, I was like, I want to have a girl and a boy. That was a
Mhm.
perfect match. And we did that. So,
It
Now,
it worked out for you. That doesn't happen for everybody. I know some people that have
right,
tried, got
right.
5 girls and a boy,
yeah.
5 boys and a girl. So,
That was not going to
But
be our
it
journey.
was going to be two either way, as
Right.
far as
It was going
our
to be two.
children. Now, if I would have never got a boy, hey, I'd have just been in the house with a lot of estrogen. That's been fine.
I never thought in terms of I can't wait to grow up and be a mom.
mhm,
I wanted a partner, and that was my focus.
mhm,
I think back to a lot of the 90s Black movies, um, Brown Sugar and Love Jones, and you have the friend group, and
mhm, mhm.
that's the life that I wanted. So kids weren't necessarily in that,
Mhm,
but at the same time, you grow up and society tells you you're supposed to get married and have kids. So
Mhm.
it wasn't like some people say they wanted to be a mom and I didn't have that.
mhm.
And that was probably due to the environment that I came up in. But I knew that I wanted a partner and a family.
Got it.
Mhm.
Got it. What would you say is the greatest lesson you learned in being a parent thus far? Because we're learning every day still as we continue to evolve. But thus far, what would you say is the greatest lesson you've learned in being a parent?
Uh, you can do everything that you think that is right. But at the end of the day, they are their own individual selves.
For me, I I wanted to always be a human being to them. I didn't want them to I wanted them to respect us as their parents. I didn't want that to be out of fear. And so things like when I say, we apologize to my son, I mean we literally, son, I'm sorry,
Mm,
because that didn't work the way that we wanted it to.
yep.
And we always treated them with respect in terms of being humans. Um, it didn't for them, they're just now realizing those things, especially our son. He can
Yeah.
look back now and say, okay, now I understand. Because then in the moment, a lot of things,
Oh yeah.
he perceived as in a different way.
Right.
So
We were trying to keep things away from him, but he realizes now that we were trying to, protect him, because the things that he was asking for, like give an example, he had a friend that he was doing music with, and the friend ended up going to jail for, I can't remember what it was for, but he wanted us to take him to visit his friend in jail. And it was like, nah, son, that's not a that doesn't even look right. That doesn't even sound like
right. He
anything.
couldn't understand
Yeah, he couldn't
then.
understand that.
Like, son, if
Yeah.
I take you to the jail to visit, like what kind of parent is that?
Yeah.
And now he realizes there was also, and unfortunately some of these things are more normalized now,
Yeah.
but there was a student who went to school with him that he was friends with who became pregnant and was having a baby shower, and we wouldn't let him go to the baby shower. And I told him, that's just not where I want my 14, 15-year-old child to be on a Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
And that's no judgment to the girl or her family or whatnot. It's just that's not what I wanted my son doing on a Saturday afternoon, especially,
Yeah.
wasn't his baby.
Just things that I mean, society has changed and things are accepted, but you just don't feel right doing certain things.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's, wrong. It's just like, how do I feel? I'm gonna drop you off to, I don't know. It's
So we just and then there were times when we would do something, and like I said, we talked to them and we were open with them and honest with them. So
Yep.
that was my thing, is just making certain that they felt heard. Sometimes that meant we hear you, doesn't change anything,
Yep.
but we hear you. And they understood that too.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't like it, but they understood it.
Yep.
I'm going to have to edit. It was a fire truck being disrespectful. Dang on it.
Look, we lived right by the police station,
Mhm.
right up the street. And it's the type of thing that I don't even hear it because it's nothing for it to start. Or I
Right.
hear it and it immediately becomes background noise.
It was yeah, I'm a corner house, so it was like right there. I was like, this is disrespectful. I'm just gonna keep on mute. I was like, they keep on talking, but then it was getting loud on. I was like, who's on fire?
Look,
Yeah,
2 years ago, I had come home from work sick and I had gone up to the little prompt cares right around the corner. I had stopped by there on my way to the house. I was sitting on the couch and I was probably quite catatonic, just sitting, waiting for the pharmacy to call so I could pick up medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I'm so used to them, I didn't hear sirens or anything. And I don't know if it was him or a friend of mine. They're texting, "Are you okay?" It's like, "Yeah, what?" Literally up the street, like we walk up the street and we're in the downtown part of our little city.
Mm-hmm.
On the main strip, there was a shootout with the police officers and someone who had been running, and I was just sitting here, none the wiser.
Yep.
None the wiser.
Let's go. I'm gonna cut it out. It works out.
Mhm.
A part that you shared though was that you didn't want to take your son to the jail, right? You didn't
Mhm.
want your son to go to the baby shower. And I know listeners are like, well, what's wrong with that? I think the importance of it for you is that that was your standard for your household.
Right.
That was a decision you made for your household that you felt was right. And
Right.
sometimes we make decisions in the moment that we feel all right, and
Mhm.
it's right from here until eternity. And some decisions we make and be like, I wish I could have changed it or did something
Right.
different. But I
Yes.
think it's really important to be able to respect what somebody does for their household, because
Mhm.
that helps their household to flourish. That helps their household to stay sane.
Right.
Right.
For some, going to the jail, they might think, "Hey, it's cool. Now I want to go to jail." It's not cool, friends. Being in the social work world, just going to do visits, sometimes
Right.
it's overwhelming for me as the
Right.
worker.
Right.
What somebody has to go through, because I can only imagine what it is on the other side. Um,
Mhm.
and though we joke that baby showers have the best food and the best meatballs, um,
Right.
it's still, you're trying to teach your child what you're trying to teach them to prepare them for the future. So I just
Right.
wanted to highlight that, because people be like, "Oh, well, who they think they are? They bougie." No,
Right.
that's
And
the
it's not
standard. I'm just
right.
saying house.
Like I said, it's
Yeah,
no
well, no.
judgment on
Yeah.
anyone. It's
Yeah.
just, you know, and plus I at that point, um, like we went to because that oldest child had gone, she had gone to jail. And like you said, the process to
Mhm.
go in for her visits, and we're going in and they're letting you in one door, closing it, locking you in a room before they open the other door. So things like that,
Yeah, I remember specifically going to, like, like she was saying, the open door, and then they put you in the
mhm.
room, and it was like us and several other families. And I joked, and I was like, "Man, they're gonna lock us in." It's just a
Right,
uncomfortable feeling,
right,
and that's just not it's not my normal life.
right,
Right, right. And it for sure is an adjustment um that some are ready and some aren't ready for.
right,
Again, we talk about that norms. For some people, they've done some things and it causes them to, go to jail, go to prison and things of that sort. And you have to go through that process with your family as you support them through it and things of that sort. But for
Yes.
some people, it's abnormal, it's traumatic.
right,
Again, I had some children one time, and I'm like, "Why y'all doing this to the kids? Man, I gotta go through all these things, but let's not do it to the kids. We don't want to make it more traumatic for them after
Mhm.
they're already coming to see parents and friends and things of that sort in that kind of situation."
right.
So again, just highlighting to those that are listening, tuning in
Mhm.
now, tomorrow, years from now, find what boundaries and rules work for your household, and you work out and do them. I think the hard part too is that, we decide to do something and we share it and then somebody runs with it. And, sometimes we could keep a little bit more and tell some more and think that's what we find, that because somebody always has a comment. I think we
Oh
talked
yeah.
about that before.
Mhm.
Um, but being confident what it is that you set aside to do for yourself because you
Right,
feel that it brings you that peace and being at ease with it.
Yep.
right,
Exactly.
right.
Exactly.
And that's one of the main things from the beginning that we had to establish. We were so young
Mhm.
Mhm.
um, when we got married, and then we're married, we have a son. We're still trying to figure out life and
Mhm.
grow up. And of course, we had family members and mentors that we would rely on for guidance and mentorship.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we had to decide, okay, this is what works for us. This doesn't work for us. And
Right.
we have to be okay with those things as a family unit, because we can get advice for them, but we have to deal with the consequences of our actions.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We could get advice from them, but we still have to deal with the consequences of our actions.
Mhm.
Yes.
It's funny, at my desk at work, I have like candies and treats and things. And she's like, coworker came up, she's like, "Oh, my willpower." I said, "Me providing sweets and stuff to bring somebody's day and your willpower are two different things. You have to either make the decision to walk away, or
Yep.
you go ahead and get yourself a piece of candy, whatever you choose to do." And what it is you still have the right to choose whether or not you're going to do it or not do it. You don't want to do it, but if you choose to do it, you choose to do it. So in that advice that you get sometimes, because
Mhm.
we're like, "Well, you told me to do da 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 da." They said it, but you still, even if it's somebody that you had put on pedestals and truly love and follow and things of that sort. We
Right.
are all still human. We can make mistakes or speak from different places of our lives, but you have to then come to yourself and make the decision that best works for you.
Right. Right. And that's, I always tell the kids, you make the choice. When you make the choice, you choose the consequence. And that could
Yep.
be good or bad. So, you know, either way, and regardless of whether I tell you something, your dad tells you something, either way, the choice is yours. And so is that consequence.
And I've told them from day one, I said, look, life is all about decisions. That's all life is. You make a decision to get up at 5 o'clock, or you're gonna make a decision to get up at 8 o'clock. You make decisions, and it doesn't just happen. You just make decisions. So whether if you decide to be a good person today, or you decide you're gonna be a bad person today, but that's a decision you make, and I stress that to them. Because you can't feel salty because well, I made a mistake and everybody should forgive me. Well, the consequences is everybody doesn't feel comfortable with that decision that you made. So that's the consequence of it.
Yeah.
That part of what she said, I made a mistake and everybody should forgive me. There are so many celebrities that have made mistakes, that have apologized,
Yep.
and have yet to be truly forgiven.
Oh yeah.
And was one of the parts of why forgiveness is mostly for yourself. You got to be able to forgive yourself because
Right.
people
Exactly.
might hold it against you.
Right.
Oh yeah.
You could make 10 out of 10 decisions, you can make 9 good ones,
You gotta remember that one.
but they're going to remember the one bad. And that's what people are going to go to
Yep.
first. And
Yep.
like you said, you have to get to a point to where you understand that and it doesn't affect you because you remember the 9 good ones.
Right.
And it's not easy.
It's not.
No.
Oh, it's
no.
not.
It's funny. I often think of it's a song in the gospel world of I've had some good days, I've had some climb, hills to climb. But when I look around and think things over, all my good days outweigh my bad days. I won't complain.
Yep.
But there's some days that was really, really bad
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
that I for sure need to complain about or need, want, desire,
Right.
feel
Yep.
compelled to complain about. And that is a process of finding like the sun in the sad, someone sent me a message today of how it's raining and it's dreary, but that doesn't mean the sun still is not shining, so still finding the positive. And that
Right.
is hard sometimes, but still just trying to press forward. It is what it is. It has happened. I have to keep going some kind of way. So I have to find some smiles, some sunshine, and some joy, happiness on this glary and dreary day.
Yes. And regardless of what you consider yourself, whether you're religious or spiritual, at the end of the day, we're all human.
Yep.
You have those human emotions are natural
Mm-hmm.
part of you. So yeah, you don't want to be angry all the time, but sometimes you got to be angry, to get through the process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But trying to tuck everything in and just be like, nah, well, I don't want to show this, and that's hurting.
Right.
Mhm.
It'll
Like,
come out.
yeah.
The hope is that you can contain it when it do come out. When it
Right.
do,
Wrong way at the wrong time.
Right.
you're in trouble. Oh, goodness, goodness. All right. So that's family and that's children and things of that sort. You had that conversation. Now let's get to the unit of you two, right?
Mhm.
How would you say your experience was in dating? What was the examples you had of healthy dating? What did that look like for you? And how did you find your way?
Hmm.
I don't even I don't even feel like we would just hang out.
Yeah.
We were just we were together almost every
Yeah.
day.
When we reconnected, it was just like she was just like it was almost as if we were a married couple, but we didn't live together. We just knew that, all right, when I get off work, what time you get off? You coming over here? Am I coming over there? That was just
And we between Waffle House and IHOP,
yeah, that was our
we had a dinner rotation.
yep.
Um, we would occasionally we might go see a movie or we
Yeah.
would go hang out with friends and things, but we were just together.
One of the things that we did was we would ride to the wealthier neighborhoods,
Okay.
and have gates, and we would just ride through and just dream. Like I like that house. That's the kind of house I want to have. And that was how we spent a lot of our time, because we were just like, well, eventually we want a house, a home.
Hmm.
Let's just see what's out there, see what they're building. So that was one of our pastimes that we
Yeah.
enjoyed a lot, and like she said, movies here and there. We take some trips
Yeah.
here and there, but we were together every single day, unless I had to work over or she had to work or something like
Mhm.
that.
Hmm. I like it. It sounds like it was like no pressure. It was kind of like it was just the norm, something that you both enjoyed doing, and you kind of like let it go as it went.
Yep.
Yes,
That's exactly what it
and
was.
I'm thankful that restaurants like Applebee's and Chili's
Mm.
not bad on the list at that time. They came out with that list
Oh,
a few months
hush.
ago. Like,
But y'all actually picked even better restaurants because the Waffle House and IHOP, they're gonna kick you out.
Look, that was
They
that was
open
our
seven.
so like we said in the previous podcast, but we were friends and then
Mhm.
we crossed the line, we got pregnant, and then we got married.
Yes.
Mhm.
And when I did get pregnant, I didn't know immediately. And so we would go to the same places, I would eat the same things that wasn't different.
Mhm.
And I started to gain weight, but I just blamed it on the IHOP and the Waffle House.
Mhm.
But when I did confirm that I was pregnant, I called a friend of mine at the time and I told her, I said, I am pregnant. And she said, what did Byron say? And I said, well, he's on the way over here. And she said, are you going to tell him when he gets there? I said, no, because we're going to Waffle House. And I don't
You
want
are not gonna mess up my waffle.
Yeah.
So at our Waffle House,
Yep.
we sat there and I told him, and we laughed and cried
Yep. Started
and
laughing.
laughed and cried because we were like, we got to tell our mamas.
And it was funny because I remember a couple of days before that, we went to have dinner at her father's house.
Mhm.
And we would always go pick up the food. They wanted fish, and I couldn't eat fish, so I would get chicken.
Grandma couldn't eat
So yeah, she couldn't eat it
y'all
either.
would get chicken.
So we would go to the fish market on the other side of town, and on the way back, I remember just looking at her one day, and she was talking about how she wasn't feeling well and stuff. I asked her, I said, "You think you're pregnant?" And she said, I don't know." And I was nowhere near ready
Mhm.
financially. So these guys have to. When I got to have my money together, I was making $6.25 an hour back in 1997. So I didn't have a lot of money, but I was still excited about it, because
Mhm.
I was like, this is the woman I want to be with, and she's could possibly be pregnant with my child. So when she told me, I was more ecstatic than anything.
But
Mhm.
then we realized we had
Didn't
to tell our
realize.
mamas.
but then I realized I
Yeah.
was making $6.25.
Right.
Woo!
Now I have a question for that because you were sharing about having to tell your mama, and there's a fear sometimes in telling our parents
Yeah.
of whatever it is that we did, dabbled in, things of that sort, because we're unsure how they're responding, things of that. So in their process, what was the feelings, if you can remember, like, what's going to happen? How did you feel that they were receiving? Were you at ease with sharing? Like, how did their process go?
I know for me, 96, June of 96, I had lost my father.
July.
July, I'm sorry. Well, it was June. It was like end of
It
June.
was
Well, June the
July.
1st. July 1st, I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Anyway, so I had lost my father. And so I just had my mother.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, how am I going to tell her this? And she's dealing with, still dealing with trying to, live without my father. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think, did we tell your mama first? Or
I I told her by myself.
you did? Okay. And I think I told mama. I might have told my
You
mama
told her
first.
by yourself.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
We told them separately, and
Yeah.
I told my mom, I'm a rip the Band-Aid off person.
Okay.
And sometimes it's blunt, and I'm not the person that you want delivering sensitive news.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. Check. Don't.
Right. So I told her, I said, I'm pregnant. I'm not telling anybody else. It's up to you to tell everyone else. And so, oddly enough, and I thought he was going to say it, my dad and my grandmother, which was my dad's mother, they had started calling him Dada
Yeah.
well before we even suspected it.
Mhm.
And I had a cousin who was pregnant at the time. And so I had heartburn all the time. And so we'd eat, and then I'd pull out my Tums, and my dad would look at me and say, Tara has heartburn all the time too. And so it's like my dad and his mom knew. And so between telling my mom and then my dad and my grandmother knowing,
Yeah.
I just told them, y'all tell everybody else. I'm not telling anybody.
Yeah.
They'll see me and they'll see. But
And of course, you get the. Are y'all ready for that? Well, I mean,
no,
no, but
I'm still not.
yeah. After 26 years, still not ready.
Right. Yeah.
We made it by the grace of God, Allah. We had to call on all of them at different
Everybody
times. Oh,
at some point,
God.
because
We made
right.
it.
You made it. You made it. So back in the day, they said, for like if you, excuse me, got pregnant, then it's like a shotgun wedding. You have to get married.
Mhm.
Did you feel like people expected you to get married because you were, even like how you were doing and being gelled together and feeling like this is my forever? But did you feel like pressure to do that?
Well, from my mom, yes. Um, but my mom, from when we were friends, this was her
Mhm.
son. My mom stopped speaking to me when I told her I was pregnant. She was okay with him.
Oh,
She stopped. She was angry at me because I
yeah.
had corrupted her son.
Yeah.
You had corrupted her son.
I corrupted her son.
Yeah.
And so she was, now all the while, mind you, I'm her only child. So the whole time she's not speaking to me, she's still okay with him. She immediately starts buying baby stuff.
Mhm.
So she was excited. She was disappointed and shocked, I believe.
Yeah.
And her thing was, if y'all get married, then I'm more apt to help you.
Mhm.
And my thing was, I don't want to get married just because I'm pregnant. And so we ended up moving in together in October. And I told him I don't have a problem being roommates and co parents, because I knew that he would be a phenomenal father. And I knew that I didn't want to lose my friend, but I also knew that I didn't want to get married because I was pregnant.
Mm.
And that wasn't acceptable for me. And it wasn't going to be. There
Yeah.
had to be more in it than just you're pregnant, let's get married.
So we did, as the old folks say, we shacked. And she didn't know this, and we talked about this on our first episode of our podcast. I worked at a contract sales place, so it was an office environment, and a young lady that worked at the cubicle next to me, I had asked her because she had recently gotten married. So I asked her, I said, "Well, what did you do? How did y'all get married?" And she said, "Well, we went to the Justice of Peace." I was like, "Well, what's that?" And she was like, "Well, this is what we did. We went to, at the time, it was another state, the state next to, well, the state we're in now. We went to a city there, and she said, you just apply for the marriage license, and then they'll start sending you stuff for different wedding chapels, and you pay the fee, and you go get married." So I'm like, okay, well, all right. So, so I had that information, and one Saturday morning, we're sitting up there, laying in bed.
So
How did that
like I said, my thing was, I'm not going to marry you because I'm pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be pressured into it by my mom.
Yeah.
We have to make that decision.
happen?
And he went through I don't know if I'm ready. Sir, we live together.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm ready. Okay, cool. You're not ready. And so one Saturday morning, we were in bed, and he rolled over and said, "We might as well do it." That was my proposal. We might as well do it. I
That was
said,
when that
well, we might as well.
Jagged Edge had that "Let's Get Married" song out.
Yeah. So, two things on this.
Mhm.
I'm going to start backwards. That's the part of we might as well do it. And he said, well, we might as well do it. Because people are really big on proposals,
Mhm.
right? It has to be this way and that way. And again, friends, we got to find what works for us.
Right.
If that's what was great, that's what was great. Because sometimes you do this little hoop and fair, and then it don't last.
Mhm. Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Because we into the see me.
Yep.
But
Right.
you see each other to really know what you're about to step into and what
Right.
it entails.
And that was our thing. Like I said, I wasn't going to be pressured into it by my mom. I wasn't going to marry him out of any sense of obligation. I wanted to marry him because we were in love and wanted to complete our family. And our wedding was $75. And here we are.
Yep.
Here we
Now,
are.
I have asked some of my close friends. I said, now, if I was to elope, how would you feel?
Mm.
And one is like, well, as long as I can see you say I do, technically that's not elope. Nobody is.
Right.
It costs money.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
But
we
find out what works for you.
right. And we
Right.
had our family, they were there. And like he said, well, he didn't say this time, but we got married on the 13th of December, and my son was born a week later on the 20th. So we beat him.
Yep. Even by
We
rule.
beat him.
But I love it. It's the simple things. Sometimes we do a lot of fanfare and get lost. But you kept the main thing, and the main thing was you loved each other, you did want to be married, and you did it.
Right.
But another part I'm going down the street of this pressure part, right? Because mama said, You know, if you get married, I might help you a little bit more.
Mhm.
And it's pressure.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm honest, sometimes it feels like a little control, a little manipulation as well.
Right.
Because even though on the outside it looks amazing and great, what if it wasn't really amazing and great, right?
Right.
So many times people are quick to jump in and say things, and for the most part, they do mean well. But
Mhm.
you still, again, like we said, gotta be able to make that decision for yourself. I
Exactly.
know many people who have shared that, you know, yeah, my mom said, you know, well, if I do this, they'll cover this for me. But if I don't do this, they're not gonna cover this for me. What in the
Mhm.
world?
Right.
You want them to make good decisions, but give them the information and let them choose from that too. Because
Right.
when they find out and get hit, they feel like, you're trying to manipulate me. You're trying
Right.
Yeah.
to control me.
Right.
And
And
that kind of stuff.
unfortunately, I grew up very quickly, and I I knew my mom for who she was and how she was. And I knew that anything would come with a price attached to it.
Mhm.
Um, and so that helped me to learn to not ask for much from her, or to really think, when I'm asking for things or when I'm accepting things from her, because there's always going to be something that comes. It may not come immediately, but it will come
Yeah.
afterwards.
Yeah.
My mom passed in 2015, and I miss her. I miss her every day. But my mom had some unchecked, unhealed trauma.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, I was oftentimes the target of whatever was going on.
Mhm.
And so I knew that I didn't want my kids to be raised in that type of environment. I didn't want to be that type of a parent. And I definitely didn't want to. And there were several decisions that I look back on now with regret, because we did, or I did, let her influence,
Mhm.
come in. Um, but there were still lines to be drawn, and I was not afraid to do that either.
But that and also that was early on, and we had to learn to, regardless of who it is, that early, the decision was ours.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We had because we had to live with it. And it's just like, if they offer you money to, well, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. Yeah, that's fine. But we still have to live with the
Still
decision,
had to live with it.
what goes on after that.
Right, right.
Mm. Still had to live with it. So blended fed came to me because I felt in blended families, we always say like one person had children that came together with somebody that didn't have children, that's a blend. Yes, that is a blend.
Mm.
But you just sharing, Margaret, how you were raised and how things were for you, and Byron, how you were raised, that's a blend. How the families were different, the attitudes were different, the beliefs were different of how life is supposed to look.
Yes.
And if we're not careful, we'll blend. We're like, oh, that's not a good mix. You know, it might be a pretty color, but it hurts a little bit. It pricks us a
Mhm.
little bit. And there's a process like none other. So to go through that experience individually and then to now come together, how is that process for you of debunking the things that mom had said in her frame of good intentions, right? But didn't quite go with the blend that you were trying to do with Byron.
Um, so in the beginning, and a lot of people, they would question sometimes the treatment, how I would treat my mom or things that I would say,
Mhm.
because she always presented the best side.
Yes.
And so when we were married, that put him inside the circle, and he witnessed some of the things that I had gone through.
Mhm.
And I think that because of that, he was even more so there for me, if that makes sense. So that kind of helped us come together, because he's realizing, oh, okay, she went through some things. If this is what I'm seeing now.
Yeah.
And I was aware enough to know that what my parents had, I did not want. So anything that was remotely close to that wasn't gonna, it wasn't gonna work. And so I think it was because of that, and because of our friendship, and because of that mutual respect for each other.
Yes.
We were able to, when those things popped up, we were able to work through them. Like I said, some of the choices that were made were from pressure from my mom. And so the two of us get caught up in it. So we can sit there and think, we let her do it again. Like,
and we talked about it. We discussed we discussed every situation, and how you feel about it. Okay, this is how I feel about it. Well, and sometimes we had to bend over and just accept whatever, because the situation we were in.
One example of people questioning how I would treat her. When after our son, but before our daughter, somebody asked me, when are y'all gonna have another one? And before I could speak, my mom said, I think we're gonna wait until he's about 4.
Wait.
And I looked at her and said, could you please not regulate my womb? And she, Margaret, well, I mean, you came into a very intimate place, so I can meet you where you are. She,
Because it's this thing. She did her part to make you come here. She has no control over.
Right.
Well, in her mind, she did.
Right. So I want to thank you for your transparency in this, because I know there are a lot of individuals that struggle with this, whether in relationships or just being single, or wherever they find themselves in this thing called life, where they feel the pressure to abide by what that mother figure, father figure, aunt, grandmother, whoever that person is in their lives that has that influence. I don't want to say power, but like that influence on them. And it's a struggle sometimes, because you feel like you want to please them. They've done so much for you, but it still doesn't align with you, and that could be a battle, right?
Right. And it's funny. I really think that the strength that I had in learning to speak up for myself actually came from the parentification that I endured with her. I was her confidant. I was her emotional support at a time when I shouldn't have been. There was domestic violence, and I was there. I was the comforter during that. And I think it was because of those situations, being placed in those situations, or even there were times when I would address her decisions and her behaviors as if she were the child and I was the parent. Those things put me in a place to where I was comfortable as I got older to step up and say, no, I'm not going to do that. Or, so the situations that I was placed in as a child helped in that, so that I could speak up. And, with his mom, early into our marriage, she and I had some conflict, and I wasn't disrespectful, but I was an adult, and I spoke to her as from one adult to another. And she didn't care for that in the beginning, and that's okay too. because I didn't care for being approached as if I were a
Right.
child. So I learned to speak up for myself, and people don't always take that, they don't take it nicely.
And I learned early on that, when it comes down to it, it's me and her.
Mm-hmm.
So, when it came to my family, my mom, hey, y'all take it or leave it. Because at the end of the day, we're the ones that's laying and crying every day, trying to figure out how to get through this,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I'll listen to you. I'll listen to whatever advice that you have.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, we have to sit and talk about it because we're together. And
Yeah.
I wasn't finna let my family come in between us in any kind of way, you know. And if it meant, even if I didn't feel confident enough to stand up, I knew how to stay away.
I like that. If I didn't feel confident enough to stand up, I knew how to stay away.
Yes.
Because if we don't feel confident to stand up, then when we go, and then one, we get beat even more, right? Because it's like, this is what you're doing, and you feeling bad, and then you fighting your own self, and like, why can't I speak up? Or I'm trying to be respectful. Not that I can't speak up, I'm trying to be respectful because it still is my mom, but I still don't understand why they're saying this, because that ain't what I want to do for my house, and I'm just stay away. And it's really important to be able to have that boundary in place, but it's a struggle, but again, commendable to you to be able to do that.
Yes.
Oh,
And it took some time before they understood that, hey, they're going to do them, so I'm going to respect that from them. And as time went on, my mother, her and I had conversations, and she was. I love that y'all still together. It's just that it was a rough beginning. I
Yeah.
think it was definitely rough.
Yeah.
But,
I think part of it because
with two, I was the baby, so
well,
I'm
that
not a baby. I'm a grown man now.
and then even though when we were friends, he was around my family a good bit.
Yeah.
I wasn't around his family as much.
Right.
And I think too, being the youngest and he's doing his own thing, like
Yeah.
I just wasn't around them. So for them, it was, who is this girl? And now she's pregnant. And his mom said to me, as I'm holding my son, she said, I told my son he didn't have to marry that girl. Ma'am, what do I benefit?
Yeah.
Like, he was living with her, I was living with mom. Like, there was no money grab. There was like, so
No.
I think it took time for them to realize that I wasn't just, fly by night. I didn't just come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And that we're committed to each other.
I think the part you said, Byron, of I'm not baby. But to your mama, you're always the baby, right?
Yeah.
And that separation anxiety is real. Whether you're right with her all the time or not with her all the time, it's like, but I still feel like I could have grabbed them if I needed them and things of that sort. And it changes because when you get married, your family unit is different now. So it's you and Margaret through and through to the end of time, right? And they're like, but hey, can you do this? Can you come through? No, I can't do that. I got to make sure, home is taken care of. And there's some that get together and feel like they could, like, still be in the streets and still be married. They find out hard way or easy way. I don't know which way, whether that works or doesn't work for them, right? But you were committed in what it was that you were doing. And again, it's just a challenge sometimes within families of being able to let go or not have whatever sense of control they felt like they did have or connection they felt like they did have.
Yes.
So again, commendable that you was able to persevere through it. Some don't always get through it.
Yeah. And we've had friends and different people we've known that still struggle through that. Do I choose my spouse? Do I choose my parents? And I get it, but and I advise them all the time, like, And at the end of the day, it's just you and them. Like my parents are gone.
Mhm.
So, I don't have that, I don't have that to deal with. So I had to learn, okay, well, again, they're gone. So at
Mhm.
some point in time, hopefully you continue to live. They will pass on, and then what are you going to do? Are you going to still have that loyalty to your mother? Because
Yeah. Yeah.
yes, that's mama. Mama raised,
Yeah.
but mama also raised me to let go. To go out to the world and do
Mhm.
my thing. And,
Mhm.
and I know that I have other friends who they come up different than I did. I came up with both my parents. I was
Mhm.
blessed. We grew up, middle class,
Mhm.
pretty much for the most part. I had both of them until my dad passed away. He was more involved in my life than my mother was, and I guess that was due to she had all the kids. So when my dad passed, she wasn't as involved that I thought that she would be. So a lot of times, like I said, there would be times when I might go a month or a few weeks without talking to her. It was just that's the dynamic of our relationship. Was she respected me, she loved me, but at the same time, I was just like, I can't put up with certain things. So when she would flip out or whatever, or have something negative to say in the beginning, I said, "Well, I can't disrespect you, but guess what? I ain't got to come over here for this." And I would stay away.
You didn't say that though, not out loud.
Yeah, I said that to myself.
You didn't say
Wasn't
that out
stupid.
loud.
There's a difference, you know.
That's right. Hey, when you get in that car, you cuss whatever you want to do. She even said
What
do that, but don't
Please
do
do be respectful in front of their face because you don't want to get reset to next week, next year.
Mhm.
Um, but I like the part you said too, Margaret, of like still you're an adult, they're an adult, and being able to have that conversation because again, they still can think like that's my child. Yes,
Right.
it is my child, but your child is not an adult. They have to make their own decisions because you won't be here always. So what does that look like? They have to find out what that is. And in all areas of relationships, I mean, I get into some conversations with some other adults too. Older, we still gonna respect each other.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
know, and that's a challenge sometimes because people feel like I'm the older. Yeah, but that doesn't mean you still know everything either. We're always learning from each other, right? So
Mhm.
we have to just be able to respect the differences, agree to disagree, still not get smart, say whatever you want to say, because we still want to be respectful.
Right.
Even
Mhm.
if you're a mother figure or things that start be respectful. Because So I lost my mom this year to be 21 years, right? So
Oh.
people come around and they feel like they're motherly, but you still got to be respectful because I had a mom, she was the bomb.com. And like, even though we're sharing like the challenges with our parents, we know our parents way better than anybody else. So we know their hiccups, the smooth
Right.
things. It was great moments. I mean, we talking about some sad moments of it, but there were some amazing moments too that we've all experienced. So we know best because we live that life. They'll be like, oh, my relationship is different. Our experience was different. And
Right.
understanding those differences, but also being able to respect everybody in their rightful places because we're adults.
Mhm.
Right. The world would be a much better place if people would
Yes.
just focus on being the best human being that they can be,
Mm-hmm.
respecting what that looks like for other people.
And another thing I would say, as far as family and friends, here it is. I'm going to my car analogy now. So, like I said on the
Almost
show.
made it.
Almost.
But I looked at um, older relatives, friends, and I was like, well, I want to have a successful marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my brother loved him to death, but he wasn't married, so I couldn't go to him, talking about marriage situations.
Mm-hmm.
And so I learned that, just back to the car analogy, you got a Mercedes, you got a nice little pretty Mercedes, you just spent $50,000 to $60,000 for this car. You ain't gonna take your Mercedes to a Toyota dealership
Mm-mm.
to let them service you. You're gonna take it to the Mercedes dealership.
Yes.
So seek your wisdom in the right place.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do go to the wrong place, there'll be consequences. So if I did go to my single brother and be like, man, look, my wife tripping, she did this, she said this, he'd be like, man, don't worry about that. Come on, go drink with me. Come on, let's go to the club. You
Yeah.
know, and he'll have me out there in situations that I don't need to be in.
Yeah.
But if I went to my married brother or brother-in-law, whoever, and say, hey man, we're going through this, and let me tell you how I handle this situation
Mm-hmm.
the right way. So seek advice, seek wisdom
Yeah.
from people who got good relationships,
Yeah.
and it sometimes it could be your mama. Your mama might not have healthy relationships, so
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's wisdom, but why you gonna listen to her?
That was another thing with my mom. She made a comment. So when my son was around 2, I went back to school. We had both started college at one point, but I was further along, so we decided that I
Yeah.
would go back and finish up. And after I graduated, I they were well, his mom, she had said to him, she's probably not going to go back to work. You know, in especially in the Black community, with
Mhm.
when we were younger, it just wasn't as accepted for someone to not work,
Right.
to to have a stay-at-home mom. And so they questioned, why did you finish school if you're just going to stay at home?
Mhm.
Or, my mom, she said to me, what happens if you and Byron don't make it?
Mm-hmm.
And I told her, instead of preparing for a divorce, I'm just going to work on my marriage.
Mhm.
And so that was one of those situations where my mom had not had a successful marriage.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going
Yeah.
to, and what you said, I knew the inner workings. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't just on the outside. There was, because some people, you can get advice from people who are single, and good solid
Yes.
advice.
Definitely.
I knew the inner works, though. I knew
Mhm.
the relationships that she had. I knew the dynamics of those. And that's not what I wanted. Like I said, my parents, um, when I was in 4th grade, I went to my very first sleepover with someone who wasn't related to me. And I was in awe all night because her parents, you could tell they liked each other. Not even love, but they liked each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was like eye-opening for me. And I realized then I don't want what my parents have. I want this. I want to like the person I'm with. I want to get along with them.
Mhm.
And so that was a situation where I had to let her know I'm not gonna prepare for something that I don't want to happen.
Yeah, and we also had, I think it was her father told us one time. He said, "Well, gotta look at it like this. Even if she working and you got $50 left over, that's still $50 that can go to, whatever." And I'm like, I'm not finna send my, after we talked about it, and we were like, hey, you got like a year left.
Mhm.
I'm just gonna work, you know, and I bear the burden of the bills and everything, and that'll help us cut down on childcare. You keeping the baby, and so you can finish school. And like you said, $50. I'm like, I'm not finna send my wife to deal with the hustle and bustle. And we just got $50 now. It'd be different if it was an extra 500. So we made that decision, and everybody had their things to say. And then I said, okay, well, we still gonna do what we said we're gonna do.
Yeah.
And which was the better decision for us. And it ended up working out. So when she did finish school, she had her degree, and she took a job, sat home with our daughter after she had our daughter. And one day I come home, she was like, I think I'm gonna go to teach. I was like, what? Okay. And been teaching ever since. So it's like, if I would have listened to them, you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And who knows what would have happened?
Right. So, questioning that, how much, in that experience, what was the lesson of how much to share with others, right? Because they found out something that way they felt like let me give you my 2 cents, What was that process of learning? Tell some, keep some, always have some.
Well, so with my mom, there was no sharing and then she would respect. She was there. She was in, like, my mom moved to the neighborhood we lived in. Like, I was her only child, and there was a closeness that bordered dysfunction. So for her, she was in the midst all the time. In terms of telling others, that's something that, because I don't trust a lot of people anyways, I don't tell a lot of my business anyways. And so I'm a pretty we have a whole podcast. I'm a pretty private person.
Okay, so you share what you want to share.
Right.
Right. And that's what we've done. We also we haven't had many we haven't had a whole lot of big issues. And because of my upbringing, when big things did come up, like, it was like we had to fix it. We had to fix it quick because I couldn't have uncertainty. Because for me, an argument leads to a fight, leads to somebody leaving. That's it. And so, and then come back and the cycle repeats, which I wasn't going to do. And so when conflict came up, there was barely time to talk to anybody else because I'm like, nope, we got to talk about this.
Yep.
We got to settle this. And I have one friend who, the last big argument that we had, I left the house, and I called her, and I just kind of circled around the neighborhood, and I'm upset and I'm venting, and I told her what happened, and I'm crying. And so she and I would talk every morning on the way to work. And so she listened, and when I got back home, I said, I'm back home, I'm going in. So when I came in, like I said, I couldn't let it like stay where it was. There had to be some type of compromise, something. So we got in bed, we laid there, we talked a little bit. And so the next morning, on my way to school, my friend was like, you were wrong, right? And so I'm blessed to have someone that I do trust that will call me out and not just say, girl, you need to leave him, or that will let me know you were wrong. And like I said, we had talked about it, and I had processed a little more, and so I knew I was wrong. But I have to get things cleared up, because if there's a sense of uncertainty with me, that's not good.
And I know for us, as far as I knew that we had some haters some people who were expecting us to fail. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
when it came to what I wanted to share, I made
Thank you for listening to the Blending Fab podcast. This podcast has been brought to you by our sponsor, Chosen Counselors. Make sure you hit subscribe if you haven't already, and follow us on Instagram at blending_fab. Check out this snippet from our next episode.
That person, and you'll be like, oh, well, that happened. It might, if you analyze people like, oh, that's why you do X, Y, and Z. Now, don't do that, because that might not be why they do that. But
Right?
you're open to finding out who that person is. If you're really engaged, if you really care, if you're really concerned, you'll go into that and embrace that and accept that.
I love what you just said about they can say, I'm not ready to talk about that. Like, that's a character trait that it's hard to come by. Like, because I'm quick to speak, but I should be quick to listen, right? And that's what you want. You want people that are in tune with themselves and their emotion enough to recognize when they don't have the ability to process something as it comes out of your mouth. That ability to say, you know what, let's put a pin on that. You know what, I don't think this is a conversation that we should be having at this stage. That's not a bad thing. That is a sign of somebody that is mature. Because somebody that isn't mature is going to give you a off the shelf, pretty quick, fast food ready, quick answer, right? And then they're like, oh my God, did I say the wrong thing? Did I say the right thing? Like, you're too animated for me. But even that, like sharing something and somebody goes, oh, wow, I bet that must be hard. But you know what? How about we talk about that some other time? Like, I'm not really sure how I feel about this right now. That is such a sign of maturity that we oftentimes miss in the dating line, especially us women, because we want to talk about that. We want to get to the bottom of this thing.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. And even being honest, if you have shared, and it's becoming overwhelming for you, or it's evoking some feelings in you that you thought that you had dealt with and you hadn't quite dealt with, saying, all right, that was enough, maybe, let's just, end it here and things of that sort. And then again, whatever the response is of like, accepting it and things of that sort, not pressuring you, because it can become overwhelming. Life, in life like no other life can, and you want to be able to be supported, like say a little bit, hold a little bit until you're ready to continue to keep on deving it out. Because in some communities, we don't really talk to a therapist. We don't really think mental health matters. And